Appraisers face numerous challenges when establishing the value of a property. One of the complications they could encounter is a property that is being built, a property that must be rebuilt, or appraising a property with special uses. When this occurs, most appraisers will depend on the cost approach for the appraisal. What is a cost approach appraisal? The cost approach is simply defined as an analysis in which a value estimate of a property is derived by estimating the replacement cost of the improvements, deducting therefrom the estimated accrued depreciation, and then adding the market value of the land. In other words, the appraiser will calculate the cost of replacing the property as if it were completely new. Then the appraiser will deduct the depreciation cost based on the number of years the property was depreciating. And finally, will add the current value of the land in order to determine the value of the asset. When would cost approach be used? Typically, the cost approach to an appraisal will be used for buildings having a specific use. Think about how challenging it would be to find comparable sales on a church or school. These properties are unlikely to go through multiple sales, making the sales comparison impossible to determine. In cases of manufactured housing, Fannie Mae also requires an appraisal during the cost approach. They require this as part of their consumer protection rules. In effect, it is to ensure the homeowner is not paying more for a manufactured home than they would for a similar home that is not classified as manufactured. In these instances, appraisers would use both the comparable sales approach and the cost approach, which would be reported on Manufactured Home Appraisal Report Addendum, Form 1004C. The cost approach may also be used if a home is newly constructed. As an example, think about a subdevelopment with homes that were built in 1985. Should a new home be built on a new lot, finding a comparable sale in the same development would be impossible. In this case, the cost approach would likely result in a value that is more in line with the actual value of the home. Determining value using the cost approach. There is a formula for determining value when using the cost approach, which is value equals replacement cost minus depreciation plus value of land. In effect, the appraiser will need to estimate the value of the land where the property is located. This value is based on the land being vacant. In some cases, the appraiser will find similar lots of land in the area and do a cost appraisal or use other estimates of land value. Once this process has been complete, the appraiser will need to estimate the cost of building out each room. Think about this step in the process as adding a room onto an existing home, such as a bedroom. Then comes the more complicated part of the process, which is depreciation. Nearly everything loses value over time. Therefore, the appraiser would need to make an estimation of how much would be lost in total depreciation if the property was already standing. By using all this information, the appraiser would then determine the final property value using the formula as indicated previously. How does cost approach work? We will go through the step-by-step process. Step 1. Valuation of land. The first step is to value the parcel of land where a property will sit. This involves looking at various factors, including location, size of the lot, whether the land is level or requires leveling, and any other factors, including frontage and even the shape of the lot. The appraiser will more than likely try to find comparable sales for similarly sized lots in the area if they are available, or they will use whatever methods are most common in the neighborhood for valuing the underlying lot. Step 2. Cost of development. To determine the value of the project, the appraiser will need to establish the cost of the improvements. It is important to remember there are two possibilities. First is reproduction, and second is replacement. Replacement costs are typically used when appraising property. Reproduction costs may be used in very limited circumstances, such as reproducing a burned-out area of a church. But in nearly all cases, the cost of building a replacement is what is used during a cost approach appraisal. There are three methods for determining cost of development: quantity survey method, unit in place method, and square foot method. Each method is slightly confusing, and in some cases, the appraiser may be instructed by the lender which option to use. Quantity survey requires a lot of work and is typically avoided by most appraisers thanks to the amount of work that's involved. This would involve taking everything from the most minor of fees to each piece of material the builder would need to construct the property. Unit in place offers accuracy by combining direct and indirect costs for a specific piece of construction. For example, to price an office building, for each unit the cost would be estimated the same, and for features such as bathrooms, elevators, etc., the estimate would be calculated the same way. Square foot method is based only on the floor area of the structure. Depending on the type of building, the value would be assigned per square foot or per cubic foot. This method is the least accurate and therefore typically the least commonly used. Step 3. Depreciation. This is where the calculations can become very tricky because one should keep in mind they are forecasting how quickly a property will deteriorate and lose value. The depreciation calculation must take into consideration three factors: physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and location obsolescence. What this means is that the age of the property, loss of utility, and factors such as what is nearby will cause the property to depreciate. Step 4. The math matters. Finally, the appraiser will use the formula we referenced earlier, which was value equals replacement cost minus depreciation plus value of land, to get the final total. Fortunately, in most cases, the cost approach of the property will not be necessary, apart from manufactured housing using FNMA for financing. This process is confusing, and the final value established at the end of a cost approach may not be suitable for insurance purposes. As a real estate professional, you will need to know if a lender is expecting an appraisal using this approach. The good news is unless you are primarily focusing on properties like churches or schools, you'll probably encounter this type of appraisal rarely in your career. The method of appraising you will most often encounter and use in your career as a real estate agent is the sales comparison approach.